Hey, what's going on, guys? Is here once again. So this is just going to be a video, kind of going over my initial impressions of the 3.17 changes, the expansion, the Archnemesis League itself, kind of everything packaged together in one video. Just my initial impressions after playing for a few days, probably totaling somewhere around like 50 or so hours at this point, maybe a little bit more than that actually, probably closer to 60. Anyway, not really relevant. So, in the background, you're watching what will be my next build diary and potentially my second super in-depth crafting guide, similar to how Earthshatter was. You're looking at what might actually end up being the next big guide. This is what I decided to play after the death to the bugged Black Star fight. And I was originally just going to play it as a fast mapper when I originally POB'd it. But it was one of those really rare instances where the paper to gameplay transferred 1-to-1, and it felt just as amazing as it looked on paper. And I can probably do all content in the game on this. So this is actually just day one already pushing red maps with this build, with a really suboptimal setup. Anyway, so to get into Siege of the Atlas impressions, I'm going to go over the pros first, things I really liked, and then I'll go over the cons. And then I'm just going to obviously leave the gameplay up in the background so you just have something to watch while I go. So, far and away, the new Atlas layout and progression system feels amazing compared to what we had previously. Watchstones for very experienced players were a tedious hassle. Watchstones for newer or less experienced players were just completely convoluted, made no sense, and were impossible to understand. That's really what it came down to. Watchstones weren't really fun for anybody. So them going away with the system makes perfect sense. It does retain some of its usefulness with the Void Stones, which I think is a good implementation of it. I am still a little bit surprised that they locked it behind endgame bosses, but to be blatantly honest, and this will be a con later on in the list, it looks like they really made the endgame a lot easier going into this expansion. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but we'll get into that later. So the new progression is amazing. It's very streamlined. It's very fast. Whether this is pure pro or a little bit of good and a little bit of bad, I'm not super sure of yet. But basically, like, you had people killing like Shaper and stuff day one. Like, not just Shaper, but I mean like every endgame boss. I think Maven being a lot easier to fight now, like to actually get to her in spawner, is a huge plus, because that was one of the things I hated most. I didn't really fight Maven that much in any league simply because spawning Maven took so long that by the time that I would get a full Maven invite for like a build diary, I would have already finished the build diary. Like, I would have done everything that I wanted to on the build, crafted all the gear that I wanted, and then it would basically be me just playing the game just to fight Maven. And like, the way that content works for like build diaries is typically after like the first one's really popular, the second one's pretty popular, the third one there's a noticeable dip, and after like the first 3 updates for the build diary, there's like no one really following it at that point. I assume most players don't play the build. Like, if they try to follow along with the build diary, I don't think they play it that long before dropping it for something else. So like, just, playing a build for like that many days for that long for a build diary, just to fight Maven, it just kind of like, it didn't make sense in terms of like the effort to like reward ratio as far as content went. So being able to spawn Maven and everything just is a lot more streamlined, a lot easier to get to, I think is really hype. So definitely, it just feels better. Progress is very streamlined, and it gives players a lot more agency, which I think is important. It will kind of like separate better players from worse players, in the sense that before you were like almost like hard time gated on what you could do. So by the time you would get to a content, or get to whatever content you were getting to. Hello. Hi Grim. I'm 100% I'm leaving that in. I had random PoE OST is playing, and then Grim just totally sabotaged my video. I'm leaving it in. Grim Rose in my video. Okay. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so before with the old Watchstone system, you would be like kind of time gated. By the time you would get to like a lot of these like upper levels of content, you would have had to have like put in so much time to like that your character would just already be super geared in most cases, right? Like if you think about like the Watchstone system, it's like, sure, well, you could get 4 Watchstones, put them all into one region, and then do that with only 4 Watchstones, which is still pretty fast. But you would like not be able to sustain those maps realistically. So you would like in a realistic setting in a league start scenario, you wouldn't just have 4 Watchstones and be directly in reds. You would need way more Watchstones than that. So yeah, this new system has a lot more player agency. You will kind of control how fast you go because a lot of the Atlas bonus and dropping maps is gated behind your Atlas tree. So you can basically take care of your map sustain almost instantly, especially with the new Kirak missions. Completing the Atlas is now very, very simple and straightforward. And you can just get everything done really quick. So if you want to rush reds super fast, you can just do that now, and it's not really much of a problem at all. And just that's giving, like I said, player agency. It gives you kind of the choice. You get to decide what you want to do and what's important to you, and you have to make the decision, especially in hardcore, if you're ready for that or not. So moving on, playing with the new implicits, like the new embers and the ichors, and going over like the new influence types and crafting things, throwing it on gear and stuff has been really fun. It is mildly frustrating trying to like build around it when we don't know what the mods are. PoE DB and Craft of Exile are both like wildly inaccurate with what the mods are right now. Both of them have like a bunch of mods listed that the other one doesn't, and some have it's just all over the place. And it's like I've personally seen crafts in game that aren't on these websites, so they're like not trustworthy at all. So it makes it a little bit hard for like what to plan around, but overall, I guess it makes it a little bit more interesting in a way, because like you just have to experiment. You just throw it on the item and see what you get, and that's it's interesting. But at the end of the day, PoE is a min-maxy type game. I just want a spreadsheet. I want to know what I can get, because these influences, the ichors, the embers, like with the new like Eldritch mods, they are directly competing with well-known Conquer influences and things like that. So like I need to know what I'm working with so I know what to gear towards, because especially in this new endgame system, like what you go for gear wise is going to be dependent on how you're building your tree, and I don't know how I'm building my tree if I don't know what influences I want. That being said, I am currently just spec'd for the new influences because I want to play with the new influences. But this EK character, I really want to take him the full distance. I want to make him as strong as I possibly can in HCSSF. And to do that, I kind of need to know, what implicits I can get. So, yeah, I just really am excited for the websites to get updated fully, so I can really sit down and POB, plan something out, and get some stuff. Because based on just the list I've seen already, some of the mods look insane, very fun. Like on my Spectral Helix character, I had the rage increase, which felt so good during maps. It almost doubled my rage generation while mapping, and it felt amazing because you could use Berserk so much more often. Because typically, like on Spectral Helix, you don't really want to use Berserk that much because it takes so long to build the rage back that it's not really worth it unless it's like a oh shit I'm gonna die button and you need the damage reduction. Or you're like at the end of the map and you want to instantly burst the map boss. That's basically the only times you really use Berserk. But with these new implicits and how much rage generation you can get, it feels like amazing. You can use Berserk so much more often, and it made it a lot more fun to play, to be honest. I really liked it. So moving on here, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but the new master mission system is drastically improved, namely with Kirak. The new Kirak system works a lot better than Xana. There is one small caveat, and that Kirak will vendor maps to you. This drives me crazy, and I hope they change it. He will vendor a rare or a yellow map to you that you need Atlas bonus for, or he'll vendor a red map to you that you need Atlas bonus for. And he will vendor it to you magic. So I have to like scour it and then alch it, or scour and then alch and then vol it myself. Whereas Xana would always sell a map to you based on its native tier, what it needed to be rolled for Atlas bonus completion. So like If she's selling me yellow maps, then they would be out, right? That's how Xana used to sell her maps. But now Kirik is selling me a bunch of yellow maps that are only transmuted. And then I only have like 2 regals, right? So I can't regal them. So I have to scour them down and then alch it. And just obviously this early on in the league, doing that with so many maps is hurting my currency quite a bit. So that is a nitpick from me, but it is super annoying and I hope they fix it. But other than that, the new Kirak missions are really good. They're so much better than Zana missions. Honestly, it really tilted me randomly finding Zana in the middle of a map, randomly finding Zana in the middle of a map, and then like you just get totally sucked out of your map, and then you get put in another one. You run through that whole map, and then you go to portal out to go back to your hideout, and then oh crap, you remember you're back in the middle of the map you were just running before that. It's just like I did not like the old Zana system at all. So the new Kirak system is really nice. The scouting reports are really nice, being able to actually like re-roll your Kirak missions and like focus farm certain things, making the unique maps way easier to get, which is definitely very important. The new Atlas system, especially in SSF, since they locked meta mods behind unique maps, stuff like that is super good. So that's most of the pros. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but that's most of the stuff that I feel strongly about. Let's move on to the cons. And I do feel quite strongly about these cons. Maybe they'll be fixed. Who knows? I'm not holding my breath for some of them though. So first and foremost, I'm going to go with the biggest one. The new bosses are insanely lackluster. I don't know how else to put it. The generals are massively overtuned. Considering you encounter them the first time you do a red map, they're way too strong. And the thing is, it's not that they're too strong. It's like they will have like 1 or 2 things that are disproportionately strong to like the relative power level of the fight and all the other things they have, which I think is just like a massive like tuning issue and will hopefully be fixed in the first patch or 2. But overall, the end game bosses, the pinnacle bosses, are almost the direct opposite, where the generals feel way harder because they're so grossly overtuned for your power level when you fight them. Whereas the pinnacle bosses, people are killing them like day 1, day 2, like tons of people, and they have like no HP. They directly fall over. And then like the damage they deal outside of a select few mechanics is pretty whatever. I mean, think back to like the Maven or the first Cirrus. Like Cirrus was bugged, so he's not a great example because a lot of people couldn't do the fight because of the bug. But if you look back to first Maven, Darky was the first one to kill first Maven, and it took how many days? Granted, the Watchstone system took longer to progress, but still, he had to like craft way more gear. It took so long for people to actually get to Maven and kill her. Again, spawning her took more time, but still, like people needed to gear more. People are like, if you look at some of the VODs of these kills, they have like no HP. They're on like budget gear. Basically, it's like get a 6-link and then go kill all the bosses in the game. Like that's literally what it looks like. And a lot of people are messing up mechanics and they're not even taking damage. Like the Eater of Worlds, when he has all the huge tentacles and they do the slam, it looks like you have to look at where the shadows are going to land the tentacle and then run into the open spot, else you get hit really hard. But, you know, joke's on you. You can just not respect the mechanic and it only does like 500 damage. I don't know. It's really weird. It's really weird. It's like 90% of the fight has no damage and then they'll have like one-shot mechanic, like a slam or something. And it feels really weird to me, man. I don't know. The new pinnacle bosses feel like conquerors. That's what they feel like to me. They feel like conqueror level or like guardian level, like elder or shaper guardians. They feel like that level of simplistic. They look visually fascinating. They do. They look amazing. But like when it comes to like depth of mechanics, like they don't hold a candle. Like they don't hold a flame. Nothing. They're nothing. They're not even a match in the light that is Maven and Cirrus. And you can not like the Maven fight or you can not like the Cirrus fight, but I don't think you can argue when it comes to depth of mechanics for the fight. They both Maven and Cirrus specifically, and Uber Elder, I would say, and even Shaper and Elder to a lesser extent have a bunch of specific mechanics that you kind of have to follow and respect, but there's not really that. Like the Searing Exarch is just, he'll throw balls at you at 50%, and then he'll throw more balls at you at 25%. And there's a small indicator at what direction they're going to come from in what order, and then Maven will zap some balls for you, and then you just, yeah, there's a little bit of zone denial there, and that's pretty much it. That's like the whole fight. That's like the whole fight, which is ridiculous for a new endgame boss. And then Eater of Worlds, there's like a lot of stuff going on visually, but not really. Like it looks scary, but realistically, there's like nothing going on in the fight. You just drag the beam around on the balls when Maven tells you to, and other than that, you just, if a ball, one of his balls, when one of his balls gets too close to you, you just turn and you face it, and it'll run away from you, and that's like pretty much it. That's it. And then avoid the one-shot slams that happen just like every other boss in the game. Like they'll charge up and then they'll do a big slam, just like, you know, everything else ever. They just feel so simplistic to me, and it was a big disappointment because I was really looking forward to the new bosses. So another year of this until revamps or something is a little bit Monka-esque. I just assume they made the end game a lot easier in general to help appease to more casual players. And I think the thought process there is that, like, yeah, we can just make the game easier on the low end. It'll make players happy. Like, it'll be more casual friendly and stuff like that. And then on the high end, if players want more challenge, they can just craft, you know, dangerous mods on the invitation. But I don't really like that. Like, you can have something that's like not as difficult or not as punishing, but still like mechanically interesting, if that makes sense. I don't feel like the new bosses are mechanically interesting fights. They just feel really cookie cutter. So yeah, that's probably my biggest gripe of the Siege of the Atlas expansion in general, is just I don't know. The new bosses are just not it for me. Because like, while you can make it harder by just throwing mods on it, that's not like a mechanical thing, right? Like, if I have 50% more life on the boss and he has, you know, more projectiles or bigger AoE, like, none of that really adds like that doesn't make the fight more interesting. It's like generic like difficulty, I would say. Like, it'll deal more damage and you need to deal more, like, you need to deal more damage to the boss and the boss will deal more damage to you, but that's not like, it's not adding mechanical depth, I think is what I'm trying to say. So I touched on this a little bit. The tuning is really bad on the bosses. The end game bosses are too easy. Just even from like a life point of view, like they're too squishy. The generals, like the conquerors of this, the Infinite Hunger and the Black Star, are massively overtuned for what they are. The Black Star in particular, I think, is bugged with the ad. If you haven't watched my RIP video, you can go watch that where I go over this in depth. Moving on. Currently everything in this league, just 3.7 in general, 3.17 rather, is just insanely bugged. Everything is so buggy. And I know, like, you're like, dude, do you know what game you're playing? It's PoE, of course it's buggy. Yes, true. But it is like way more buggy than normal. It is like ridiculous levels of buggy, even down to like mapping. I've touched on this before too. I've been talking about this a lot on stream rather. It is just stupid. Like, it feels like they accidentally put the 50% more damage onto a bunch of abilities that monsters use as well or something. Like, they plugged 50% more damage into an algorithm and then it applied to all the monsters too. Because I'm like playing some insanely tanky builds and then no damage mod map, no nothing. I will just randomly get hit for like 5,000 damage. And that makes literally no sense. It's got to be like a bug, unless they were like, we're not nerfing player defenses, but we are doubling monster damage. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only way I can see. And I can't imagine GGG balancing the game around like buffing a bunch of spell damage in the game to account for the fact that we have spell suppression. Because if they were to do that, it would be like one of the worst decisions I could possibly think of for the game. Because people already feel shoehorned into having to build spell suppression because of how strong it is. And if you were to overtune spell damage in the game to account for spell suppression, that would make spell suppression absolutely more mandatory than it already is. And I think any change like that like kills build diversity, or, you know, just gearing diversity, which is already, like, I would say at an all-time low because of spell suppression. I was actually kind of sad it didn't get nerfed. I can't imagine that's a change that they would consciously make. It has to be a bug or a tuning issue or something. Like, it has to be, and I'm just desperately awaiting word from them so I can at least look for a patch date or a hotfix date or something. It's been 5 days. Please say something. Holy moly. Anyway, moving on. The very last thing I have here is just Archnemesis. Archnemesis, obviously, it's really rewarding. I'm sure you guys have seen all the videos from the people really juicing the mechanic and stuff, but like, ultimately, It's super clunky. The inventory system, I gotta say, I don't understand why you need a limited inventory. Having its own inventory is neat. Having a limited inventory makes no sense to me. It just gets cluttered, and I just don't it just doesn't add anything to the mechanic. I don't understand why they felt they needed to put it in. And on top of that, it's like the recipe system is super convoluted. It's not like an interesting type of depth, in my opinion. It's just they just threw it in there and it's convoluted for no reason. That's just kind of how I feel. Granted, I have not interacted with Archnemesis nearly as much as some of some of the videos you're seeing from people, but I have interacted with it a decent bit, and it's just like I'm kind of getting to the point now where like if I'm not like focus farming something specifically, I'm probably just going to ignore the mechanic. Also in hardcore, it's it's like Metamorph 2.0. Things can get really rippy. You basically just look for the most important thing, if you don't know, is like looking just at what the statue is, like what the petrified rare is. If it's a good rare monster type, then you can fight it, and if not, you don't. That's how it works in hardcore. Otherwise, you're just gonna die. You look at like the skeleton boys, or just like one of the super non-imposing monster types. If it gets that, throw whatever mods you want. You should be okay. If it's, I'm sure you've heard, a Katava's Herald or something like that, or like a Revenant or something, then run away. Definitely don't click that. You'll die. But I think that kind of covers everything for me. The biggest con for me by far is just the new bosses are just so lackluster, man. I am really disappointed in them. Well, other than that, I have been having fun. The biggest thing that I really don't like right now is just, like I said, the damage tuning in maps. I'm sure you've even seen it through the spot randomly sometimes. I take no damage 90% of the time. You'll notice I even have Fortify up sometimes. And even if it's not max Fortify, it's still damage reduction, you know what I mean? But sometimes I will just randomly get chunked super hard for literally no reason. It makes no sense. That's the biggest thing I hope they fix. But yeah, that's everything, guys. Appreciate you for watching the video. If you like the content, leave me a thumbs up. If you don't like the content, or you didn't like the video, feel free to thumbs down and tell me what you think I can do better. I do read all the comments. And if you like just the videos and the content that I've been putting out in general recently, leave me a sub. I really appreciate it. Trying to get to 1,000. I'm almost there. I want 1,000 subs, man. But yeah, thank you guys. I will see you in the next video. Take it easy. Have a good one. Enjoy Siege.